Nobody scored more touchdowns at the tight end position than Eric Ebron of the Indianapolis Colts. His ADP is through the roof at 5'11". He is our number 7 PPR too early tight end. And I tell you what, like, people are trying to make this, Eric Ebron versus Jack Doyle, just crowning O'Doyle, basically saying O'Doyle rules, So, like, I love what Ebron did last year, and I think we need to take a second and look at what he did. He joined Tyler Eifert as the only tight end since 2013 to have 13 or more touchdowns. So we're talking about a span of 6 years where, really high double-digit touchdowns. But let's take a look at that Ebron versus, Doyle splits. In 16 games that Ebron played, he only started 8 of them because of Doyle existing. Doyle's played and started in 6 of those games. Doyle received 32 targets to only Ebron's 22. But Ebron with 7 touchdowns during that span. We are seeing a situation where maybe, because you look at average depth of target, Ebron had 10.5, Doyle had 5.5. The Colts know what they have in Ebron. He's a playmaker. They're going to put him in space, especially with Frank Reich. He comes from that Andy Reid tree. Like, they are going to put their best player in position to win. Not saying he's their best player, but he's going to get in position. I really like what they have. I think we see an offense where maybe both of these guys could benefit being on the field together.
Yeah, Travis, I mean, I think that's the big point here, right? Because you're looking at the stats, but if you also look at the finishes, and when they both played, they actually were both playable as tight ends, right? Like, one, I don't have the exact numbers, but I was researching it yesterday, and it wasn't like if O'Doyle was the tight end 3 for the week, Ebron was like the tight end 9. Or if Ebron was the tight end 1 or 2, Jack Doyle was the tight end 8 or 9. And yes, there were a couple of ones that were, Ebron was 1 or 2 and then Doyle was 14, but I think that had to do a little bit more so with his injury. So this is what I actually think about the tight end situation there in Indianapolis. They've always kind of used 2 tight ends. If you think back, even to Allen and Kobe back
Fleener.
Yeah, and so I think what we're going to see is a lot of that. They brought in a lot of playmakers. So my concern isn't, the yardage isn't particularly high for Ebron, and that's where the concern is because, I expect Doyle to take a lot more of the between the 20s gameplay and have Ebron more in the red zone. And so for me, Ebron's a nice little piece in a tight end landscape that's, last year didn't do too well. But Doyle is there, so I do have that concern. I can't tell you I wouldn't be lying if I didn't say that having Doyle there does scare me.
I thought it was super cool about Eric Ebron that in his first 4 seasons in the NFL, he only scored 11 touchdowns total. Yeah. But in his first season with the Colts, he scored 13. So you talk about a tight end who finally gets into the right system and produces. And we're following up with Ebron with Jared Cook. Like, you just can imagine what it looks like to get somebody in the right place. It's really cool.
And I just think it's crazy to we're just going to write off Ebron because we think that Doyle just eliminates him from the game. But like I said, 7 touchdowns when Doyle was on the field as well. And like all last year, Frank Reich could not stop talking about Ebron, and he was elite and the athlete that he was. And so we're kind of seeing a team almost redraft Ebron. As the Lions tried to do it and couldn't get it done. Reich was like, "Oh, we'll take your trash and make it into treasure."
Do the additional weapons that they brought in make you concerned because now they have Paris Campbell?
They do, yeah, right. And not only Paris Campbell, but Devin Funchess, who's a huge red zone target. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We know that Andrew
tight ends
Luck
are the most
tight ends.
Tight ends are the most fluky part about. From year to year, you can never predict the touchdowns. That's why I don't necessarily like leaning on that stat and saying, yeah, the tight ends were great or the touchdowns were great, but what's the likelihood he's going to repeat that? And are you paying for those touchdowns this year? Is that what you're paying for?
It's a little different though if you're looking at an offense that prides itself in producing a lot of red zone targets. So
It's true.
you know, you can have yes, touchdowns are volatile, but if that team consistently throws to the tight end in the red zone, then you're at a situation.
And I just think for a guy who was going 17th off the board last season, there's going to be a lot of that surprise factor when you see 13 touchdowns.
Right.
Oh shit, we're not going to make the same mistake. Are we allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yes, we have the explicit up. So
we're not going to make those same mistakes.
Right.
So you could see a real big boost in his ADP this year. But yeah,
and we have, and that's the problem.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Whisperers podcast. You can hear more from John and Travis on Google Play, SoundCloud, and iTunes. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at TF Whisperers.